Barbara Billingsley, born December 22, 1915, in Los Angeles, California, became one of television's most iconic figures as June Cleaver, the perfectly poised, pearl-wearing mother of Leave It to Beaver. She played June for all 234 episodes across 6 seasons, from 1957 to 1963, and those pearls she wore on screen were never even in the script. She chose them herself just to hide a surgical scar on her neck, and they accidentally became the most recognizable look in television history. The role never earned her an Emmy during its original run, but years later she received 2 Daytime Emmy nominations, not for June Cleaver, but for voicing Nanny on Muppet Babies. And in 2005 she was honored with a Caney Award for her lifelong contribution to family entertainment. In her final years, she quietly battled a long-term illness, and on October 16, 2010, at the age of 94, Barbara Billingsley passed away peacefully at her home in Santa Monica, California. Hugh Beaumont, born February 16, 1909, in Lawrence, Kansas, became one of television's most beloved figures as Ward Cleaver, the calm, wise, and quietly powerful father of Leave It to Beaver. He played Ward for all 234 episodes across 6 seasons, from 1957 to 1963, and what made his performance so genuine was no accident. He was a real-life ordained Methodist minister with a Master of Theology degree, and every quiet den conversation, every steady life lesson he delivered to Beaver and Wally came from a man who actually lived that way. The role never earned him an Emmy nomination, but in 2004 TV Guide ranked his Ward Cleaver as the 28th greatest TV dad of all time, and for millions of viewers, he was simply number 1. On May 14, 1982, Hugh Beaumont passed away in Munich, West Germany. He was 72 years old. He had traveled there to visit his son Hunter, a psychologist living in the city, when a sudden heart attack took him without warning. He died far from home, quietly, the way he had always lived. Tony Dow, born April 13, 1945, in Los Angeles, California, became one of television's most beloved figures as Wally Cleaver, the cool, steady, and big-hearted older brother of Leave It to Beaver. What most people don't know is that Tony had almost no acting experience when he got the role. He was a Junior Olympics diving champion who walked into an audition and somehow walked out as America's big brother. He played Wally for all 6 seasons from 1957 to 1963, and the genuine chemistry between him and Jerry Mathers was so real, so natural, that audiences never once doubted they were watching actual brothers. The role never brought him an Emmy, but in 1988 he was honored with the former Child Star Lifetime Achievement Award by the Young Artist Foundation, recognition that the role had meant something far bigger than any single trophy could measure. On July 27, 2022, Tony Dow passed away at his home in Topanga, California. He was 77 years old. He had been diagnosed with liver cancer in May 2022 and spent his final weeks at home under hospice care, surrounded by his wife Lauren of 42 years and his son Christopher. Ken Osmond, born June 7, 1943, in Glendale, California, became unforgettable as Eddie Haskell on Leave It to Beaver, the smooth-talking, troublemaking friend who acted overly polite in front of adults, but showed his true mischievous side the moment they turned their backs. The character was so real and so convincing that it turned him into one of television's most iconic personalities, appearing in nearly 100 episodes and later returning to the same role in the new Leave It to Beaver, keeping that legacy alive for a whole new generation. His name even entered the American language, used to this day to describe anyone suspiciously two-faced. The role never earned him an Emmy, but in 1987 the Young Artist Foundation honored him with the former Child Star Lifetime Achievement Award, and in 1999 TV Guide ranked Eddie Haskell among the 50 greatest TV characters of all time. On May 18, 2020, at the age of 63, Ken Osmond passed away at his home complications from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and peripheral artery disease. Stanley Fafara, born September 20, 1949, in San Francisco, California, played Hubert Whitey Whitney on Leave It to Beaver, Beaver's loyal, grinning, mischievous best friend who could talk him into almost anything and somehow always made it worse. A role that made him a familiar face across the neighborhood of Mayfield, often bringing humor into even the simplest moments. His mother brought him and his older brother Tiger to an open casting call in 1957, and both brothers landed roles on the same show, creating a rare real-life connection on screen. Whitey never brought him major awards or nominations, but the character stayed with audiences, especially in moments like the unforgettable billboard scene that fans still remember. But away from the screen, his life took a much harder path, as he struggled for years with addiction and personal troubles before finally finding sobriety later in life. On September 20, 2003, on his 54th birthday, Stanley Fafara passed away in Portland, Oregon due to complications from surgery, leaving behind the memory of a boy who once helped bring a simple, honest world to life. Frank Bank, born April 12, 1942, in Los Angeles, California, made every scene a little funnier as Clarence "Lumpy" Rutherford on Leave It to Beaver, the big, bumbling, lovable bully who hung around Wally and somehow always ended up at the center of whatever went wrong. Lumpy was the kind of character you laughed at and rooted for at the same time, too clumsy to be truly threatening and too funny to ignore. Frank played him across 50 episodes of the original run and came back for over 100 more in the 1980s revival, and when the show ended, he did something nobody expected. He walked away from Hollywood entirely, built a career as a bond broker on Wall Street, and ended up managing the finances of his own former castmates, including Jerry Mathers and Barbara Billingsley. The role never earned him any awards, but in 1997, he told the whole story himself in his memoir, Call Me Lumpy, and the world loved him all over again. On April 13, 2013, just one day after his 71st birthday, Frank Bank passed away in Rancho Mirage, California, after battling cancer, closing the chapter on a life forever tied to one unforgettable role. Sue Randall, born October 8, 1935, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, brought quiet warmth to every classroom scene as Miss Alice Landers, Beaver Cleaver's gentle, patient, and endlessly kind elementary school teacher on Leave It to Beaver. She stepped into the role in 1958, appearing in 28 episodes across 4 seasons. And what made Miss Landers so memorable was exactly what made her so easy to overlook. She was simply good, steady, and real in a way that never needed to shout. There's even a sweetness in knowing that young Beaver had his first little crush on her. The role earned her no Emmy nominations, no major awards, but it gave her a permanent place in the memory of everyone who grew up watching that show. On October 26, 1984, just 18 days after her 49th birthday, Sue Randall passed away at Pennsylvania Hospital in Philadelphia, the same city where her whole life had begun. In keeping with her wishes, her body was donated to medical science. Richard Deacon, the bald, bespectacled character actor best remembered as Fred Rutherford on Leave It to Beaver and Mel Cooley on The Dick Van Dyke Show, passed away on August 8, 1984, at the age of 62 after suffering a sudden heart attack at his Beverly Hills home and being rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead that same night. Born May 14, 1922, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, made pomposity look like an art form as Fred Rutherford on Leave It to Beaver, Ward Cleaver's loud, self-important colleague and the father of Lumpy, who walked into every scene like he owned the room and left every scene having proved exactly the opposite. What made Richard truly remarkable was that he was doing this on 2 legendary shows at the exact same time, playing Fred Rutherford on Leave It to Beaver while simultaneously playing the long-suffering Mel Cooley on The Dick Van Dyke Show, making him one of the most recognized faces on American television throughout the entire 1960s. Neither role brought him an Emmy nomination, but few character actors of that era were as consistently funny, as instantly recognizable, or as genuinely beloved behind the scenes, a man who played fools beautifully while being anything but one himself. Doris Packer, born May 30, 1904, in Menominee, Michigan, had one of those faces that made you sit up straight the moment she appeared on screen, and that was exactly the point. As Mrs. Cornelia Rayburn, the stern and unflappable principal of Grant Avenue Elementary School on Leave It to Beaver, she appeared in 17 episodes across the show's run, and every single one of them had Beaver squirming in that chair across from her desk. What most viewers never knew was that the woman playing the school authority figure had herself served as a technical sergeant in the U.S. Women's Army Corps during World War II, so the authority she carried on screen was never entirely an act. The role brought her no Emmy nominations, but alongside her equally memorable turn as the insufferably wealthy Mrs. Chatsworth Osborne Sr. on The Many Loves of Dobby Gillis, she built a legacy as one of television's finest character actresses of the entire era. On March 31, 1979, at the age of 74, Doris Packer passed away in Glendale, California. Bert Mustin, born February 8, 1884, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, had one of the most extraordinary stories in all of Hollywood. He didn't step in front of a camera for the first time until he was 67 years old, making him one of the most unlikely success stories the entertainment industry had ever seen. As Gus the fireman on Leave It to Beaver, he brought a gentle, grandfatherly warmth to every scene he appeared in, becoming a familiar and beloved presence across multiple seasons of the show. What made Bert truly remarkable wasn't just the role, it was the life behind it. He worked consistently through his 70s, 80s, and even into his 90s, showing up on everything from The Andy Griffith Show to All in the Family, becoming one of the oldest working actors in Hollywood history. The role of Gus never brought him award nominations, but the man himself became something rarer than any trophy, a reminder that it is never, ever too late to begin. On January 28, 1977, at the age of 92, Bert Mustin passed away in Glendale, California.